Palworld, or Pokemon with Guns, as a lot of people are calling the game, has gotten into some pretty big controversy today, and I wanted to talk about it because I've actually just really been enjoying this game. I've been playing it a lot. I've been trying to double upload it alongside Call of Duty because I'm just really genuinely enjoying the game. And apparently a lot of other people are enjoying the game as well, because this game has sold over 8 million copies in less than 6 days, which is a pretty big achievement for an indie game that seemingly came out of nowhere. And currently the game is also available on Xbox, but I wasn't able to find numbers about how many units it might have sold on Xbox, but a lot of people are also playing it for free with Game Pass. I mean, it's not free, but with Game Pass you can play the game. But if we specifically look at the Steam charts here, this game has peaked at over 2 million players, and even at the time of recording this video right now, which is technically not even the peak hours, there's almost 1 million people playing the game at this moment. And really, that's why it's stirring up so much controversy. It's because the game is actually succeeding, it has sold really well, people are really enjoying the game and playing it a lot, and some people don't like that. And by people, I'm obviously referring to Nintendo, the Pokemon company. I saw this tweet from Mudahar, and we have to talk about it because they have finally acknowledged Palworld. I mean, they didn't really acknowledge Palworld specifically, but we know what they're talking about. It's just, this is the weirdest statement. We have to read this and go over this. It starts here by saying, inquiries regarding other companies' games. We have received many inquiries regarding another company's game release in January 2024. That could be any game, dude. I wonder what they're talking about here. We have not granted any permission for the use of Pokemon intellectual property or assets in that game. Well, what game are you referring to? Because you're not even mentioning them by name here. It's Palworld. Let me rephrase that for him. We have not granted any permission for the use of Pokemon intellectual property or assets in Palworld. We intend to investigate and take appropriate measures to address any acts that infringe on intellectual property rights related to the Pokemon. To the Pokemon. I don't know, I just gave it that inflection because I feel like that's what they thought when they were writing that. Guys, it's not just Pokemon, it's the Pokemon. We will continue to cherish and nurture each and every Pokemon and its world and work to bring the world together through Pokemon in the future. Love the Pokemon Company. Yeah, when I first saw this, I was also like, what's the point of this? But see, I'm just a little confused because Palworld was actually officially announced back in May of 2022. So Nintendo has had to have been aware about this game since 2022. There's no way that this game, when it was announced back then, wasn't on their radar. They weren't looking at this game and thinking, maybe Spark, it looks a little bit like Pikachu. I don't know. They're throwing Pal Spheres. I'm pretty sure everyone, when they play this game, is going to call it Pokeballs, which we definitely have. Literally, all of this information was here back in 2022. So why are they now having a reaction to it 2 years later? Did they want them to succeed and then, try to make them fail by, suing them or something? Or maybe they just don't have a case and now they're trying to make one. I'm not exactly sure because I'm not Nintendo, I'm not the Pokemon Company, and I'm not sure what course of action they're really going to try to take here. But I do know this. If this game launched and it really was just Pokemon with guns and it wasn't a good game and it wasn't fun to play and it didn't have replay value, then it probably wouldn't have millions of people buying and playing the game like it is currently. Now, I have seen this in my comment section, and I've seen people mention this on Twitter as well, but someone had actually made a paid mod that basically ported in Pokemon assets into Palworld, so that way you could play Palworld and it would really look like a Pokemon game. You would play as either Ash or Misty, and all of the pals in Palworld would be transformed into actual Pokemon. And while that might sound neat, that's definitely the type of thing that could get them into some legal trouble with Nintendo and the Pokemon Company. So when I saw that, I was like, cool. This is probably not going to last very long now. But yes, as of now, this is the Pokemon Company's official statement and reaction to Palworld's existence and its success. But realistically, does Nintendo or Pokemon really have anything to worry about? I mean, I don't think so. They're a behemoth of a company. Pokemon is one of the most well-recognized and highest-earning franchises in gaming history. Not even just for gaming. I mean, they also have the trading cards. They also have the TV shows, the movies, the merchandise. Pokemon is fucking massive. At this point, Pokemon's like this giant fucking massive tree that's been growing for thousands of years. It's like an ancient giant tree, and it has succeeded and grown. And Palworld is just like a seed that's starting to blossom, but it pales in comparison to Pokemon. At the moment, this just kind of feels like a knee-jerk reaction to the success of Palworld, and other companies are also making statements and kind of jumping on shit. There's some drama brewing up, and they want a piece of the pie as well. I'm of course referring to this tweet from Dexerto, which says, PETA has issued a statement addressing animal cruelty in Palworld. I love how they use this photo of the Lamballs with their mounted machine guns just trying to protect the base. Like, I know Dexerto are the ones that picked this picture, but that just makes it even funnier because if anything, these lambs are acting in self-defense. They're just trying to protect the base. They're trying to save the base pals and the human that lives there. This is most certainly not animal cruelty right here. But anyway, here's the statement. It says, quote, PETA has already heard from many Palworld fans who have no interest in eating pals and wants a vegan guide created for the game. What the fuck, dude? A vegan guide created for the game? I mean, you could just eat berries. Literally berries, and you know, starting a berry plantation, having a berry farm is kind of one of the most fundamental ways of getting food at the start of your game. You don't have to kill the pals, the animals. You don't have to harvest their meat and organs and eat them. You can literally just eat plants if you want to. No one needs to make a vegan guide. And dude, I have nothing against veganism. You can eat whatever the fuck you want. I don't care. But for the love of God, can we stop making these comparisons between the real world and video games? Because this shit ain't real. This is just a video game, bro. We're out here playing Pokemon with guns. We are not trying to be intentionally cruel to the animals. I mean, maybe some people are, but they're just having fun on a fucking video game. It's not real. Stop trying to farm impressions on the internet, PETA. Go actually do something. There are real people in the real world committing atrocities towards animals. That's not happening in a video game. It is pixels. It literally does not matter. This is a complete non-point. It's nonsense. It's buffoonery. Do not play into their hand. I mean, literally all the replies to this tweet just sum up exactly what I'm thinking too. It's just a video game. And then you have someone who wants to eat lamb balls, which I mean, you can, because it's a video game. It's not real. Now, interestingly enough, if we go to the Palworld Twitter, they actually have some pretty awesome stuff planned for the future of the game, which I want to talk about as well. Yeah, it's this tweet right here where they're talking about the future of Palworld, and they have a roadmap right here, which this is definitely like the most important thing that they've tweeted so far. And actually, at the time of recording this video, they released, I think, like an 18 gig patch or something like that. I think they're trying to stop people from cheating or exploiting and hacking in the game, which, to be honest, I didn't even know that was a thing. But, you know, if they're going to be adding PvP and stuff like that, then they definitely need to, you know, have some kind of anti-cheat or figure out how to stop people from cheating in the game. But one thing you guys might want to know if you're playing the game is that you can still do that little exploit where you can capture the bosses by getting a wanted level. I tried it last night immediately after the patch went live, and I was still able to do it. So if that's something that you want to do, I would recommend trying to, you know, catch them before it does get patched, because it is a glitch. It's a little exploit in the game, and it's not anything too game breaking, but okay, to be perfectly honest, it is kind of game breaking. But I don't know. If you want to catch it, I would do it now before it gets fixed. And if they do eventually add PvP, then they need to do something about that, because, you know, don't bring those bosses into PvP. It's going to be extremely unfair. It's going to be broken and just kind of dumb. I know from my standpoint, I just kind of caught it for my own personal enjoyment, and it does make certain aspects of the game a little bit easier, so it does help out. I'm kind of thinking later down the road, they might need to find a way to like retroactively remove this from people's games, like remove the captured bosses, because it could cause some pretty serious issues in the future. But yeah, on this roadmap, it says that they're going to address some critical issues with the game. Some people were having the world date roll back. I think this might have happened in my world, but it didn't like mess up too many things. Like, I think the amount of days had gone backwards somehow, but thankfully everything is still working in my save, so I don't know. They said that they're also going to make some key configuration improvements and improvements to base pal AI and pathing, which that's a pretty big one, because sometimes the pals get stuck in certain areas, or they just don't path correctly to where they should be going. So that'll be a nice little quality of life improvement. But this is the big one right here, the planned future updates, and this is honestly very ambitious for a game that's already doing so many things right and doing so well. At some point in the future, they're planning to add PvP, raid bosses, which they're referring to as endgame content, which I would assume is maybe similar to like the raid bosses in the recent Pokemon games and stuff. They're also going to have Pal Arena, which is PvP for pals. So, you know, that's kind of a staple of Pokemon games, is having the pals, or, you know, well, having Pokemon battle against each other. But we don't know exactly how that's going to play out, but it is highlighted here in blue, so it makes me think that this is maybe a more like high priority kind of thing that's going to maybe come out more recently, like more soon. And then below that, it sounds like they also have plans to have crossplay between Steam and Xbox, which sounds pretty good. They say various Xbox feature improvements as well, server transfers and migrations, improvements to the building system, and then they're also potentially going to add new islands, new pals, new bosses, and new technology to the game, which is obviously going to keep the game going and just breathe more life into it. So that's definitely some pretty exciting stuff. And I feel really bad because, you know, the Palworld team is a pretty small team. There weren't that many people that actually worked on this game, and when this game released and started succeeding, they started getting death threats from people who are like longtime Pokemon fans and stuff like that. But man, they're just chugging along. They are doing so well, and it's just really interesting to see, because this isn't like some massive AAA dev team. This is not some kind of massive studio that has a lot of people working and a lot of resources. games. This was a smaller team that managed to make a game that, sure, you could call it Pokemon with guns, and it might seem like that from the outside looking in, but when you actually play the game and get invested, you realize that the game truly is so much more. It has a deep progression system. You can craft, you can do hardcore survival, you can capture the pals or the Pokemon in the game, you can go shiny hunting, you can fight the bosses, you can fight alpha pals, you can purely just collect resources and build like a massive base and have it look awesome. There are so many things to do in this game that really the recent Pokemon games have not been doing, and I really do believe that's a big reason why the game is succeeding and doing so well. It's because, you know, it is early access, so it does have some bugs and glitches and some wacky, weird stuff happening here and there, but for the most part, it is a mostly complete game with a solid gameplay loop and lots to do, and I can't really say that that's the case for a lot of games that have been coming out recently. I mean, aside from like maybe Baldur's Gate 3 and a handful of other games, more often than not, you're probably just not going to get what you're paying for. And this is coming from someone who grew up on Pokemon. I played the ever-living shit out of Gen 1, 2, and 3. I couldn't play beyond that because, you know, back then, I think it was the Nintendo DS, like Gen 4 and beyond that. My parents back then, they didn't want to get me or my brothers the consoles. They didn't want to have to keep buying things because they were buying like the Game Boy Color, the Game Boy SP, the Advance, all that stuff like that. They were getting tired of constantly having to upgrade and buy new shit, so they were like, nah, you're not getting that anymore. And that's ultimately how we transitioned to the Xbox 360 and playing Call of Duty and stuff, which in hindsight is really how all of this, you know, like my channel and stuff came to be, which is, you know, insane thinking back. But yeah, I don't think I really got back into Pokemon until they did like the Gen 3 remake. I think it was Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. I think that's when I kind of got back in. I bought myself a 3DS, got kind of addicted to Wonder Trading and stuff, and I also played Pokemon Sun and Moon. And then I also took a little bit of a break again, but then I think it was around the time of like when Legends Arceus and the Gen 4 remakes were announced. I wanted to play Gen 4 because I never got to experience the originals, and Legends Arceus actually sounded pretty ambitious, and it's really interesting because a lot of people are looking at this game and reflecting on it, and I feel like this is where a lot of Pokemon fans are really divided, because some people absolutely adore Pokemon Legends Arceus, and some people, you know, they wanted to like the game, and it feels like they saw the potential of the game, but it just wasn't quite there. It wasn't quite good enough, and especially in the case of Scarlet and Violet, you know, the game was really buggy. It had all kinds of frame rate issues and stuff like that. And this is just my opinion, but I don't really feel like Scarlet and Violet was necessarily better than Pokemon Legends Arceus. I liked going after the alpha Pokemon and exploring and having a bit more of an open world experience versus trying to bring back like the old style formula of fighting 8 bosses and then doing the Elite Four and stuff like that, trying to force that into an open world kind of thing. But the big reason I'm sharing all of this backstory, like my history, my own personal history with Pokemon, is because the Pokemon franchise is extremely nostalgic to me. I've been playing it for so long. I watched the TV shows, I watched the movies, I have the cards. I still collect cards to this day, man. Last year, I got re-addicted to Pokemon Go. I'm playing Pokemon Sleep. Pokemon is still a major part of my life. But I would wager that Palworld is doing Pokemon better than Pokemon has been doing in these recent years. Now again, these are just my opinions and this is from my own personal experience, but it really just feels like Pokemon has been kind of hanging by a thread as of lately. They're mostly just using nostalgia to try to keep people interested in the franchise and in the series, and they're not really innovating when it comes to a gameplay standpoint. Now, obviously, a big part of that could be hardware limitations. You know, they're having to make these games for the Nintendo Switch, and the Switch has not had a serious hardware upgrade throughout its entire life cycle, which could be really holding back the potential of these games. We do have to keep in mind that Palworld is running on Unreal Engine, and that does give it a lot more flexibility. There's a lot more potential because Unreal Engine, I don't know if it's running on Unreal Engine 5 or like a previous version of it, but I do know for a fact that Unreal Engine 5 is fucking nuts, and there's so much more that they can do with an engine like that, especially when it's running on, you know, like the newer Xbox or PS5, which I know the game's not on PS5 yet, but I think they might be looking into that as well. But especially this game running on PC, it has way more potential than the Pokemon games can. But what I find to be kind of a strange reaction coming from Pokemon fans when they look at this game is, instead of, you know, going back to Nintendo or the Pokemon company and being like, hey, why don't you guys do stuff like this? How come you guys aren't improving the formula? How come you guys aren't innovating or pushing the games forward? Instead of doing that, they're sending death threats to the Palworld devs. They're getting mad at people for enjoying this game, which just doesn't make sense because people who are playing this game are just going to play it and enjoy it regardless. It really is just that meme of like angry nerds being like, oh my god, Palworld is just a cheap knockoff copy of Pokemon. Why are you even playing this trash? And then the Palworld players are just like, hey, I caught a Chickapee. I'm gonna name it Cock. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this idea, but you can be a fan of two things at once. I know that's like a crazy revelation to have, but you can enjoy Pokemon and you can also enjoy Palworld. That is actually a possible reality, and I know that because it's one that I'm living in right now. I love Pokemon, and I love Pokemon games. I wish that the newer ones were better and were able to do the things that Palworld's doing, but they're just not. And I really think that this should just be a big wake-up call to Nintendo and to the Pokemon company to try to do better. I don't really know if it's the devs' fault. I don't know if they're being overworked or if they're, having to meet some really tight deadlines and they can't make better games. I don't know if it's hardware restrictions. It could be a combination of both. But I do know this, even though Palworld is doing really well and it's selling really well, Pokemon has way more money and resources than most other game companies to be able to produce a better high quality game. And so far with everything that's transpired, this is reminding me of the drama that happened when Baldur's Gate 3 came out, and devs from other game studios were actually mad at Larian Studios for making such a good game. They were trying to tell people, don't get your hopes up. We can't make games like this. We can't make games that are this good and have this much polish and this much attention to detail, which is just bullshit. I understand that could be the case if you're working for a publisher that's going to overwork you and, force you to meet a certain deadline, and then the games are going to turn out to be not as good as they could be. I do understand that perspective, but the fact that some people don't want to strive for greatness and they don't want to work harder and actually make good quality, solid games is just sad. There are some game devs out there that want to take our expectations and just crash and burn, baby. Make trash games, rush them out, make them unpolished, unfinished, have all kinds of bugs, glitches, and problems. No content, no replay value. That sounds like a great game to me. Can't wait to spend $70+ on it. And they wonder why we're opting to play games like Baldur's Gate 3 and Palworld instead of their games. So yeah, I'm gonna go play some Palworld. Peace.
Outcome, Triangle.